The cry in the rubble. The sky was red with dust. Smoke curled up from broken metal towers and the ground was hot under Jax's boots. He walked slowly through the crash site, holding his breath. This was not his first wreckage. But something felt different this time. He wasn't supposed to be here. The war zone had been marked off limits by all known governments. But Jax was a scavenger, a survivor. If he didn't take risks, he didn't eat. His old helmet beeped softly, warning of radiation. Jax ignored it. His eyes scanned the twisted metal, the alien wires, the glowing blue blood that stained the rocks. A ship had gone down here. Alien, huge, and important. He stepped over a piece of curved armor. Then he stopped. A sound. Soft. Weak. A cry. Jax turned his head, holding his breath again. No engines, no wind. Just silence. And that one small sound. He followed it, careful not to make noise. His boots crunched glass and bone and he passed bodies. Alien soldiers with hard skin and long limbs. He had seen their kind before. Proud. Strong. Deadly. But none of them were crying. He reached a half-broken chamber. Inside, smoke drifted like fog. Something moved under a fallen metal beam. Jax stepped closer. The cry came again. Higher now, like a baby bird calling for its mother. He dropped to one knee and looked under the beam. His breath caught. It was small, soft-skinned, purple eyes. Its tiny fingers reached up as it cried again. The baby was hurt, a deep cut across its side, and its body shook with fear. Jax didn't think. He dropped his pack, crawled under the sharp metal, and gently pulled the baby free. Hey. It's okay, he whispered, though he knew the child wouldn't understand. It looked up at him, blinking, trembling, but no longer crying. Jax looked around. No movement, no sound, only death. Where's your mother? He asked quietly. The baby only whimpered. Jax felt something strange in his chest. He had seen death many times, but this was something new, something alive, helpless, innocent. He wrapped the baby in his jacket and held it close. The body was warm. Small fingers grabbed his shirt. It didn't want to let go. Jax looked toward the sky. His ship was far, 3 hours' walk through dangerous ground. But if he stayed here, the baby would die. You're coming with me, he said softly. He turned to leave the chamber. Behind him, something moved. Jax froze. He turned slowly, hand reaching for the old pistol on his hip. Nothing. Just smoke. Still, he felt it, eyes watching, a weight in the air, like being hunted. He walked faster now, carrying the baby tight against his chest, past the wrecked hulls, past silent weapons and cold bodies. Every few steps he looked back. Nothing. But the feeling stayed. When he reached his small ship hidden between rocks, he climbed inside and sealed the door. Only then did he breathe out. He checked the baby again. Still breathing. Skin pale but alive. The eyes stared up at him. Large, deep, almost too knowing. Jax cleaned the wound with care. He gave the baby warm water, crushed food, anything he could find. The child didn't fight, didn't cry. It just held onto his finger and watched him. Jax sat on the floor, tired, unsure. What now? He muttered. Do I return you to your people? If they're even alive? He leaned back against the wall. Or do I keep you safe myself? He knew what that meant. More danger, more risk. Alien babies didn't come without trouble. And yet, Jax looked down at the child curled in his arms. It had fallen asleep. He smiled without meaning to. Outside, beyond the thick walls of his ship, a shadow moved silently across the rocks. Tall, strong, eyes glowing softly in the dark. A mother had found her child's scent, and she had found the human who took it. But she did not attack. Not yet. She watched through the cracks in the stone and waited. The silent tracker Jax didn't sleep that night. He tried. The small alien baby was curled up beside him in a soft blanket, its body warm and still. The lights in the ship were dim. The engines were silent. Outside, the planet's winds howled against the rocks. Everything seemed quiet. But Jax couldn't shake the feeling crawling up his spine. He kept checking the sensors. Nothing showed. Up. No movement. No energy signals. No ships nearby. Yet the unease never left him. Jax sat in the pilot seat, eyes half closed, gun resting in his lap. He wasn't scared of enemies. He had fought worse things. But this was different. It wasn't danger he felt, it was something else, like he had been marked. He looked down at the baby sleeping so peacefully, small chest rising and falling. What did I just get myself into? He whispered. The next morning, the world outside was pale and cold. Jax stepped out of the ship for air. The sky was filled with dust clouds and long shadows stretched across the rocks. He moved a few feet from the ship, checking the area. Everything looked the same. Then he saw it. A mark. It was carved into the stone, just outside his door, long, sharp lines with circles and dots. Alien writing. Fresh. Jax crouched beside it. He didn't know what it meant, but it wasn't just graffiti. This was a message, a warning. He stood quickly and scanned the rocks. Nothing. He walked around, the ship in wide circles. At first, all seemed normal. But then, just behind a large boulder, he found something that made his breath catch. A footprint. Not human. Long toes, deep claws, heavy, fresh. Someone, or something, had walked right up to his ship during the night. Jax's hand went to his pistol. He scanned the ridge above. Wind moved the dust, but nothing stood there. Still, the silence felt heavier now, like he was not alone anymore. He rushed back inside and locked the ship's door behind him. He checked the baby, still asleep. No harm done. But the markings outside haunted him. Why hadn't it attacked? Why just watch? Jax tried to calm himself. Maybe it had been a scout. Maybe they saw the baby and chose not to strike. Or maybe they were waiting for something. He didn't know. But he knew one thing. Whoever had come would come again. Hours passed. Jax stayed inside, watching every scanner, every camera feed. He didn't touch his tools, didn't search for scrap like usual. His world had changed now. He wasn't a scavenger anymore. He was a protector, and he didn't know how to stop being one. Just before sunset, Jax noticed something else. More symbols. They were etched on another rock, this time further out. 2 circles connected by a line. A symbol of bond. Warning. A claim. He looked down at the baby who had woken and was watching him with wide eyes. "You're not just anyone, are you?" he said quietly. As the night came again, Jax made his decision. He couldn't stay here. Whatever had found him would come closer. He needed to move. Go deeper into the safe zones. Find shelter. Maybe even find someone who could translate the markings, or contact someone who knew more about alien traditions. But just as he began powering up the ship, something flickered across his rear camera. A shape. Tall. Graceful. Barely visible in the dust. Jax froze, staring at the screen. It was gone in seconds. But he saw it. Not a creature. Not a soldier. A female figure. He didn't see a weapon. Only glowing lines on her skin and a long, flowing mantle behind her. Her eyes were bright and locked on his ship. Jax turned off the engine again. His gut told him everything. This wasn't just a search party. This was the child's mother, and she had no plans to knock on the door. First contact. Not friendly. Jax stayed frozen in the pilot seat. The engines were off. The ship lights dimmed again. Outside, the figure had vanished into the thick clouds of dust. But he knew she was still there. The silence was not natural. The wind had gone quiet. The air itself held its breath. Something ancient and fierce stood just beyond the rocks, and it was watching him. He didn't move for several minutes. The baby stirred in his arms, making a soft cooing sound. He held it closer, feeling how small and light it was. That tiny life was the only reason he hadn't already lifted off, but now it felt like the reason he couldn't. Then, 3 soft taps. They echoed through the ship's outer hull. Slow, calm, deliberate. Jack stood slowly and walked toward the main door. His heart beat hard in his chest. He unholstered his pistol, not to attack but to hold, to feel ready. His fingers hovered over the door's manual override. A part of him wanted to shout through the intercom, tell whoever was out there to back off, but another part, something deeper, told him that wouldn't matter. The visitor had not come to talk. She had come to take. Jax opened the outer view hatch. Through the dust, she stood just a few feet away. Tall, not armored like the other alien soldiers he had seen in the past. Instead, she wore something smooth and dark, almost grown from her skin. Glowing lines pulsed across her arms and neck, moving like veins made of light. Her face was calm, too calm, no fear, no rage, only focus. A cold, sharp kind of stillness. Her eyes glowed violet. She looked at him. Not the ship, not the weapon. Only him. Jack swallowed hard. "You're her mother," he said softly, though she wouldn't understand his words. She stepped forward and placed her hand on the ship's door. He could see now. Her hand was trembling. Just a little. Not from fear, but from something deeper. A kind of hunger. A desperate need. Jax turned to the baby, still in the blanket. The child reached out toward the door, a tiny cry escaping its mouth. It sensed something. Recognized it. Jax looked back at the woman. Slowly, he opened the door. Dust blew inside, swirling around his boots. The alien mother stepped in without hesitation. Her movements were smooth, controlled like a trained warrior. But her eyes never left the baby. Jack stayed still. She didn't speak, didn't gesture. Instead, she knelt down, gracefully, like a queen lowering herself before a throne, and held out her hands. The baby made a sound, almost a laugh. Jax knelt too. He gently placed the baby in her waiting arms. The moment their skins touched, the glow on her body brightened. Lines of energy spread across her face and arms. The baby cooed, then buried its face in her chest. Jax watched, unsure of what to feel. Relief, regret? He had carried that child across a wasteland, fed it, comforted it, protected it. And now, without a word, it was no longer his. The alien mother rose again. She looked at Jax with those glowing eyes, and for a moment, he saw something strange, not gratitude, not joy, but decision. Before he could speak, she raised her hand and pressed a device against the wall. A sharp tone rang out and the door slammed shut behind her. Jax reached for his weapon, but she moved faster. With a twist of her wrist, she released a pulse of light that knocked the pistol from his hand. It clattered across the floor. Useless. Now, he didn't move. Didn't try to fight. She stepped close, too close, and placed one hand on his chest. Not violent, not soft, but firm. Then she spoke. The voice was deep and smooth, filled with layers of meaning even though he couldn't understand. The words, they rolled like thunder and echoed like wind in a canyon. Jack stared at her. "I don't know what you're saying," he said quietly, "but you've got your baby. That's all I wanted." She tilted her head and then shook it, slowly. Jax frowned. "What?" She looked at the baby in her arms, then back at him. She reached out and touched his shoulder with her glowing fingers, gently this time. Slowly. Then she stepped back and turned to the console. Jax's eyes widened. She was disabling his ship. In seconds, the main systems were locked, the engines offline, and the communication signal erased. "Wait." he said, stepping forward. What are you doing? She turned. One word. Firm. Final. He didn't understand it, but he understood the tone. You're not leaving. Alien rules, human heart jacks stood in silence as the last spark of power faded from his ship's control panel. The humming that had always comforted him was gone. Everything was still. His fingers hovered over the buttons, tapping them again and again as if hoping the system would flicker back to life. But it didn't. The ship was dead. Locked down. And he hadn't done it. She had. The alien mother stood behind him, cradling the baby with one arm. Her other hand was lowered now, fingers no longer glowing but still tense. She wasn't afraid of him. She hadn't raised a weapon. She had only done one thing. Taken away his escape. Jax turned slowly, heart pounding in his chest. Why? He asked, his voice low, shaky. You've got what you came for, your child's alive, you should be gone. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer. Jax backed up until his spine touched the cold wall. He wasn't a coward. He'd fought pirates, smugglers, wild beasts, even faced starvation in deep space. But this was different. This wasn't just danger. This was something unknown, something ancient, and she was staring at him with eyes that held no hate, only a strange kind of claim. She spoke again. Slow, deep words filled the space between them. Her language sounded musical, like wind chimes under heavy rain. Jax didn't understand, but it didn't matter. She wasn't trying to explain. She was trying to tell. He pointed at the door. I need to leave, he said firmly. I'm not part of your people. I'm just a scavenger. The baby let out a soft sound in her arms. The mother looked down, stroked its small head, then looked back up at him. And then she did something that chilled him. She knelt. Jax blinked. What are you? She placed the baby down gently, then bowed her head. It wasn't a show of peace. It was a ritual. He watched as she removed a small object from a pouch at her waist, a glowing crystal. She placed it between them on the floor and pressed her palm over it. Light poured from the stone, forming shapes in the air, circles, lines, strange figures that spun and shifted. It was a hologram. No. More than that. It was alive, pulsing with energy. Jax watched as the light formed two shapes, one tall, one small. Then the tall one reached into fire and pulled out a crying child. The figures merged into one glowing image, then were encircled by rings of silver light. He didn't need a translator. He understood the story. A sacred rescue. A binding act. Life owed for life saved. And now, that debt had meaning. You're serious, Jax whispered. Your people. You think I belong to you now? The alien mother looked up, eyes glowing again. Jax stepped back. No. No way. That's not how it works. I'm not some ancient hero. I was just helping a child. He ran a hand through his messy hair, pacing. This was a mistake. You don't owe me. I don't owe you. But she didn't argue. Because to her, this wasn't about choice. It was law. Jax sat down hard, against the wall, head resting on his knees. The baby crawled from her arms and made its way toward him. It climbed onto his lap without fear, curling into his chest like it always had. Like it remembered who carried it out of fire. Jax held it, sighing. You're gonna make this hard, aren't you? The mother walked to a side panel and opened it. She placed the glowing crystal inside, sealing it with a hiss. Jax noticed her hands were steady now. No more trembling. She had completed the ritual. She had claimed him. Jax felt a weight settle in his chest, not fear, not even anger. Just the heavy realization that he was no longer in control of his own path. Not in this place. Not with these people. He looked up at the mother, who now stood silently, watching both of them. I'm not yours, he whispered, But I guess I'm not mine anymore either. Outside, the wind blew over stone and sand, but inside something far more powerful had begun. The council's demand. The sun rose slow and red the next morning, spilling its light across the stone ridges and broken metal around Jax's small ship. The dust storms had calmed. The winds whispered like they were waiting for something. Inside, the ship. Jax stood at the narrow window, jaw tight, watching the horizon. He had not slept. Not even once. His ship was still dead. Systems frozen, communications fried. Not from damage, but from deliberate command. The alien mother had stayed silent since the ritual. She barely glanced at him now. Her attention was always on the baby, but Jax could feel it in the air. Something was coming. This wasn't over. Just before noon, he saw the movement, 3 dark shapes moving slowly across the ridge. No engines, no noise. They walked, tall, proud. Figures in deep blue robes marked with glowing lines and symbols that shimmered like water. They moved like they owned the land. Not fast, but with the certainty of those who were never questioned. The council. Jax backed away from the window. Great, he muttered. The family meeting. The alien mother didn't react. She simply lifted the baby, kissed its forehead, and wrapped it in a ceremonial cloth. When the door hissed open, the wind carried in a heavy silence. The 3 robed figures stepped in one by one. Their faces were long, their eyes glowing with different shades, green, blue, violet. Old eyes. Powerful eyes. They said nothing at first. Jax stood straight, unarmed, hands at his sides. He knew, better than to speak first. The tallest of the 3 stepped forward. He examined Jax like someone might examine a strange animal. Curious, slightly disgusted, and deeply cautious. Then he turned to the alien mother and spoke in a low, measured tone. Jax couldn't understand the words, but he didn't have to. The tone was sharp, formal, a question, a challenge. The mother's reply was quiet but steady. Her head stayed high. She handed the baby to one of the other council members, then stepped between Jax and the 3 elders. Jax watched them go back and forth in their strange, rolling language. The tension in the room thickened with every word. Finally, the council leader raised his hand and pointed directly at Jax. He said one word. Jax didn't understand it, but it sounded like a verdict. The mother stepped forward and spoke again, louder now. Her voice echoed through the ship. She was defending him. Jax felt something inside him shift. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She was protecting him. The council elder responded harshly. Then the 3rd figure, older and slower, raised both hands. The room went quiet. This one stepped forward and looked into Jax's eyes. Not like a threat, more like a test. He spoke a single phrase in broken human tongue. You accept fate, or go alone, hunted. Jax frowned. Fate? The elder placed a hand over his chest. She binds you. You save blood. Now, you are marked. Jax looked at the alien mother. She was watching him carefully, not angry, not pleading, but waiting. The elder continued, struggling with the words. If you leave, you leave. Marked. Hunted. No peace. Jax shook his head slowly. You're saying, if I walk away, your people will come after me? The elder nodded once. Jax stepped back, voice rising. You can't be serious. I saved a child. That doesn't make me your slave. The tall elder snapped something harsh in their own tongue. The room pulsed with tension. But the mother raised her hand and they stopped. Jax looked at her. What am I to you? She stepped forward. Not close. Just enough to meet his eyes. Her voice was soft. Not slave. She touched her heart. Chosen. Jax's breath caught. The word hung in the air like a stone dropped in water. He didn't know what to say. The council turned and began to leave, slow and silent. But the elder who had spoken human paused at the door. You stay. You live. Then, one final warning, you go. You run. And then they were gone. Jack sat down hard on the cold metal floor. His whole life, he had survived by staying light, moving fast, keeping no ties. But now, for the first time, someone had chosen him. Not for power, not for profit, for what he did. He had saved a life. And now, that act had changed his own. He didn't know yet if it was a prison or the start of something more. More than a protector. For hours after the council left, Jack sat alone on the edge of his ship's metal ramp, staring at the dust blowing across the cracked ground. The alien baby was sleeping again, wrapped tightly in the ceremonial cloth. The mother stood nearby, quiet and still, like a shadow carved in stone. She hadn't spoken since the elders had gone. But her silence wasn't empty. It felt full of pressure, like a storm held behind a dam. Jax felt broken open. Everything inside him was pulling in different directions. Part of him wanted to scream, to demand his freedom, to grab what little gear he had and run far, far away. But another part, a deeper, quieter part, was beginning to shift, because that baby had gripped his finger again before falling asleep. Because when the mother had looked at him during the council's warning, her eyes hadn't begged for help. They had trusted him. And that was new. Jax finally spoke. "You can talk, can't you?" The alien mother looked at him but said nothing. He kept going. "You understand me better than you let on. You've known since the moment you walked into my ship. So why the act?" Still silence. Jax stood, walked toward her, stopped just a foot away. "You're not just a mother, are you? You have rank, authority. The council didn't try to overpower you. They asked. They listened. Why?" Slowly, she reached behind her head and unclipped a metal band hidden beneath her long hair. She placed it on her temple. A shimmer of light passed over her face. When she spoke again, her voice was clear. "Because I am Veltha, blood daughter of the Shard Queen, heir to the Singing Throne, protector of the third Sunborn." Jax blinked. "You're royalty. War-born royalty," she corrected softly. "Raised in battle. Taught to lead. And now, mother." Jax stepped back. "So the baby is more than just mine," she said. "She is ours, the last of her bloodline, the one they want to erase." Jax looked at the sleeping infant, now understanding the weight in her small body. "And who's they?" Velta's voice dropped to a whisper. "My sister, and the loyalists who follow her." Jax didn't move. "She attacked our vessel in secret," Velta said. "No warning, no honor. She wants the throne for herself, and to do that she must destroy my daughter." Jax let out a breath. "So you weren't just a random crash? You were hunted," she nodded. "And now, so are you." A sound echoed through the air, sharp, high-pitched, mechanical. Jax turned fast, drawing his pistol. "What was that?" he asked. Vaeltha grabbed the baby and moved quickly, scanning the horizon. "A seeker drone. Hers." Jax felt cold inside. "How long do we have?" "Not long." Another sound, closer this time. They both looked at the sky. 3 dark shapes were descending. Fast. Sleek ships armed and glowing, slicing through the clouds. Jax ran to his ship, but he already knew it wouldn't fly. Not anymore. He turned to Vaeltha. "You disabled my escape." She met his eyes. "I knew they would come. You are safer with me than alone in the stars. We'll see about that." Jax grabbed a nearby crate, opened it, and pulled out an alien rifle he had salvaged months ago. "Can you fight?" Her smile was small and cold. "I was born in war." Within moments, she shed the long robe and activated the hidden armor beneath. Her skin lit up in battle patterns, her eyes sharpened, her muscles tensed like a predator ready to strike. Jax had never seen anything more terrifying, or more beautiful. The ships landed hard in the dirt, throwing dust and fire into the air. Figures spilled out, dark armored soldiers, fast and silent. Jax stood at the front of the ramp, rifle up, pulse pounding. He looked at Vialtha. So, what now? She handed him a curved blade. Now, human, you prove why the stars sent you. And then they charged. The oath of the outsider, they came like shadows on fire. 3 dropships slamming into the rocky valley, throwing up clouds of smoke and heat. Soldiers poured out, their armor marked with red symbols and glowing lines that pulsed like veins. No warning, no talk. They moved with one purpose, to kill the air and anyone who stood in their way. Jax felt the ground shake beneath his boots. The alien rifle in his hands was heavy, its grip not built for human fingers, but he held it tight. His heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't move. Not this time. Not when a child's life, and something more, rested on what he did next. Vialtha stepped beside him, her armor glowing, her face sharp and calm like a blade before the strike. The baby, now hidden deep inside the ship, had been placed in a protective pod, silent, sealed, and unseen. The first soldier crept up the ridge. Jax fired. The blast struck the armored chest, sending the figure crashing back into the dirt. That was the signal. The battle exploded. Plasma bursts lit up the rocks. Alien weapons hissed and cracked through the air. Vialtha moved like liquid death, her curved blades spinning, her kicks fast and brutal. Every time Jax thought she was overwhelmed, she turned faster, hit harder. She didn't fight like a queen. She fought like someone with nothing left to lose. Jax covered her flank, firing into the narrow gaps between the rocks, each shot buying a second, each step pushing them back. The enemy was strong, faster, better, trained. But Jax had something they didn't. He had purpose. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about defending something. Someone. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just running. He was standing. But then he saw her. The sister, tall, armored in silver, with a black crown of metal curved over her head like claws. Her soldiers moved aside when she walked. Her eyes burned bright and her voice was ice wrapped in command. "Traitor," she said to Vialtha in her own language. "You bring shame to the throne. You bring a human." Jax stepped forward. "You speak my language? Good. Then hear this. Touch that baby and I will burn your world." Her face twitched. Not fear. Confusion. "You are not chosen," she said. Jax raised the rifle again. "Then call me problem." The fight began again. This time it wasn't a battle. It was a war. Soldiers surrounded them from all sides. Jax took a blast to the shoulder, spun, dropped to one knee. Vialtha stood over him, blade swinging wide. Blood splashed the rocks. One enemy grabbed her arm. Jax shot him point blank. He roared through the pain, stood again and pushed forward. And then it happened. A soldier broke through, made it inside the ship. Jax saw the flash. Too far, too fast. "No," he screamed. But before he could move, Vialtha leapt. She landed hard inside the ship and found the soldier at the pod's door. 1 second later, the enemy was on the ground, his body broken. Vialtha turned to Jax. "It is done," she whispered, but the sister appeared at the ramp, energy sword in hand. Jax raised his rifle, empty. She moved fast, too fast. Jax threw himself forward, arms wide, ready to block the strike. But it never came. Vialtha stepped. Between them, the blade cut deep. She fell. Jax caught her before she hit the floor. Her blood was bright, glowing. His hands shook. "No, no, no, don't you dare." She touched his face. "You." "Protect her now," she whispered. "Don't do this, please." Her voice was faint. "Swear it." Jax leaned close, forehead against hers. "I swear." Her breath slowed, then stopped. The sister stepped forward, blade dripping. Jax stood, eyes full of fire. And for the first time in his life, Jax did not feel small. He felt unbreakable. He reached for the curved blade Vialtha had given him. He didn't swing like a warrior. He struck like a storm. One move, one scream, and the sister fell. Jax stood over her, breathing hard, blade shaking in his hands. Outside, the soldiers watched, and then dropped their weapons. Silence. Peace. Weeks later, Jax stood on a high platform under a violet sky. Alien banners danced in the wind. The baby, now called Leyrin, was in his arms, wide-eyed and calm. A priest stepped forward and placed a crystal circlet in Jax's hand. "You are not one of us," the priest said, "but you are ours." Jax looked at the crowd of aliens below. He remembered the scrapyards, the lonely nights, the silence of space. And then he looked at the child in his arms. Her mother had chosen him. Now he chose her. Jax placed the crown on his head, and the stars whispered a new name. Protector of the last Sunborn.